How are you? Good. That's the, yeah. Everyone should move up one table. Come on in. Bring it in, Gene. Is this your first? Come on.
Good morning. All right. We get started. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to McGuffin Mornings. Thanks for having it. Thanks for coming today. My name is Chris McGuire. I'm Director of Client Growth and Engagement at McGuffin. We've had a lot of exciting things going on at McGuffin, even within the last couple weeks. We celebrated our 15th birthday. Which also came with the launch of the new brand and our new website, which was a true labor of love. And if you haven't checked it out, please, McGuffincg.com. We're really proud of it, and it was a lot of work. So 15 years ago, McGuffin started as a boutique firm, and we've kind of evolved into an organization that really has found its niche in helping professional services companies like insurance, banking, education, and things like that. Really talk about helping them to communicate complex products and services in a way that is simple and human. Simple so that it's easily understood, and human so that it connects with people in a real and meaningful way. So today we're having a McGuffin Mornings, which started about 5 years ago. McGuffin Mornings were a way for us to connect with our clients, but also really keep up with different trends and technologies and things. So we invite speakers to come in, experts, and tell us about things that are going on and help educate us together so that we can partner with our clients better and move forward. Today we have Mike Maddock, who is he considers himself an entrepreneurial anthropologist whose purpose is to inspire and empower curiosity. He refers to himself as a idea monkey because he likes to solve problems with disruptive ideas. In addition to being a founding partner of McGuffin, Mike's background includes being the CEO and founder of Maddock, an internationally recognized innovation marketing firm. He co-chairs the Gathering of Titans Entrepreneurial Conclave at MIT. He also has been president of the Chicago chapters of both the Entrepreneurs Organization and the Young Presidents Organization. An author known for his contributions on Forbes. He has published 4 books, of which he is going to talk about today, Plan D. So without further ado, I present the doodler turned cartoonist, now author, Mike.
Okay, so it's my first job out of college, my first real job. And I was hired as an art director and brought into a conference room that was about a quarter the size of this room. It was a company called GSI in Carroll Stream, Illinois. And they wanted to introduce this new art director. So they brought me into this room, and then all the employees in the room around a table. And it sounded like this. Mike, this is Joe, this is Christy, this is Tom, this is Betsy, this is Ruth, this is Ruth, this is Ruth. And my eye, the cartoon characters where they float off the ground and their eyes go, whoa! I locked in on this beautiful young lady, Ruthie McCausland, and I was just dumbstruck. And it was the last name that I heard for the rest of the introduction. I went home that night and told my mom that I met the girl I was going to marry that day. She said, "That's nice, Mike." No, seriously, I met the girl I'm going to marry today. Now, this was bad news to Ruthie because she'd been dating the same guy for 5 years. So I did what most young men would do. I proceeded to make a complete ass of myself for the next 8 months. I did anything I could do to get Ruthie's attention. There's a name for this now. It's called sexual harassment. But I didn't know it at the time. And so anyway, fast forward 8 months, and a guy named Joe, who was one of the first people introduced that first day, so I remembered his name, it was his birthday. By the way, it's Chris's birthday on Friday. Everybody wish Chris a happy birthday.
Thanks, Mike.
Anyway, so it's birthday time for Joe, and they made a collection. They said, we're going to order Chinese food. So I had this idea of Chinese food, fortune cookies. So I went to a bulk food store, and I bought all these fortune cookies and took the tweezers and pulled out the fortunes. And I took an old-fashioned typewriter and retyped all the fortunes and waited till the end of the meal when people started popping open their fortune cookies. And one by one, people would open their fortune cookies and read things like, dump Pat, date Mike, choose Mike, Mike would be nice. And people looked at Ruth and said, you know, I think he might like you. So that worked. I've been married to Ruth for 28 years. I found this meme. It's kind of sad. So why do I tell this story? The reason I'm telling this story is because I was a disruptive student. I was a disruptive employee. I was a disruptive client. I'm an expert on causing trouble. And I want to talk today a little bit about people that blow shit up for the good of the whole, disruptors. Chris mentioned that 28 years ago I started a company. What we do at Maddock Douglas is we help clients that are being punched in the face by the future look around corners and stand up new products, services, and business models. And we've done that for about 25% of the Fortune 100 now. We've delivered close to $10 billion in incremental revenue, helping them figure out what's next. That's important to this conversation because the people we're usually working with are entrepreneurs. They're entrepreneurs in large businesses or small businesses, and they are really, really good at seeing the future and being disruptive. And it struck me that they had things in common. Now, I've written a few books. I'll talk about a couple of these. Brand new is about the process that people use to come up with an insight and then a new idea and then launch a new product. Free the Idea Monkey is about the tension between visionaries and operators in companies. I'll talk about that. And Flirting with the Uninterested is about innovating in the sold not bought category. Hi, Krista. Specifically financial services. That's Maria Ferrante-Shepis. She carried the water in that one. She was our client for 8 years at Guardian and Prudential. Now she's the president of Maddock Douglas. Plan D is about the superhero powers, the people that consistently break things better. They come in and they break things. And you guys know folks like this. Maybe you're one of these people that you can come into a situation, a relationship, and do something that's unexpected. You break it and put it back together and it's better. So I started to be curious about what makes these people tick. What were their superhero powers? And I interviewed hundreds of people and came up with 10 different superhero powers that disruptors have in common. They don't always know they have these superhero powers, but they do. So sometimes they're doing it unconsciously, and sometimes they're doing it on purpose. And I thought today it would be fun to focus on 3 of those superhero powers that disruptors have in common. And this is a breakfast, so I'd rather not give a speech. I'd rather have a conversation. So if you guys have questions or comments, raise your hand and we'll have a conversation about it, okay? How's that sound? Good?
Cool.
Okay, so about 15 years ago, we were hired by Procter & Gamble. This is a big deal for us because we learned about innovation on the shoulders of Procter & Gamble. When you think about it, P&G has 40 plus brands, and they stand up $100 million new product once a year across these brands, which means they know how to see the future. They're really, really good at understanding what consumers want next. They're so good at it that today in Arkansas, there are hundreds of companies going to Walmart saying, please don't cut our costs. And then there's P&G that says, this is how much it's going to cost. It's going to be on this end aisle. This is how much you're going to make, and we want 4 facings. And Walmart says yes, because P&G knows the customer's customer better than Walmart does. And that's where the real power is. So when P&G called and said, hey, we want to hire you guys to help us come up with new products for dentists, I was thrilled. Now this was a professional dentist commercial channel. So the dentist needed something to sell. So we did all this research, and then we wound up in my favorite part of the brainstorm, and I'm running around like a crazy man going, how about this, how about this, how about this, how about this? And it comes to lunchtime. And I go up to this guy and I say, how do you think it's going? Isn't this great? Isn't this great? This is great. Look at all these ideas. And he's like, yeah, no, it's not going well at all. do you know what I do for a living, son? And I remember this guy was like 7 feet tall. I'm looking up at him, you're a dentist? And he goes, that's right. And that means I'm a doctor. You know what else that means? It means I don't care about white teeth. I care about gingivitis. Now, you've been running around all morning talking about whitening teeth. And you know what? It's a false proxy. You can have white teeth and have gum disease. You can have white teeth and your teeth can be falling out of your face. So I'll tell you what. This afternoon, I don't want to hear one more thing about whitening teeth. You got that? And the next time you come into a room like this, I suggest you do your homework. It's not going well. So you can imagine that afternoon, I was a different person. You know, I remember at the end of the day, I went up to P&G, our client, and I said, I don't think that went too well. That guy yelled at me, and so did his friend. And they said, no, it went fine. It went really well. And if they don't want to sell what we have to sell, we'll do it ourselves, in so many words. And that's what they did. They sold direct. And that product that we were working on was white strips. It was whitening for your teeth. It turns out that people did care about whitening teeth, even if dentists didn't. By the way, in an ironic twist of fate, in 2016, the association that protects dentists from the future took a case to the Supreme Court arguing that only dentists should be able to whiten teeth. So 15 years after an idea that was gladly given to them was rejected, now they're arguing that they should be the ones to do it. By the way, it was a $4 billion opportunity at the time that they didn't want to address. Today it's an $11 billion category. So there's this thing called an expertise trap. I like to say you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar, which means that when you've been working on a challenge, a problem, a relationship for more than 6 months, you become an expert. You know what works, you know what doesn't work. You know why Harry got fired, you know what's legal and what's illegal. You know, you know, you know. And the more you know about a situation, the harder it is to see possibility when it walks right in front of you. You're an expert. And so one of my favorite sayings is, am I in the jar on this? The moment I feel myself holding on to something and not letting go for a better grip, I ask myself the question, am I in the jar? And that's what disruptors do. One of the things I noticed was that disruptors had this unique ability to use frameworks, stupid, simple models, to shake themselves out of their go-to punch. So when under pressure, we tend to go to our swing. We tend to go to what got us here. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a brilliant book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's how experts under pressure have to shift their thinking and respond differently. And that's what disruptors will do. So 2 types of thinking, lateral thinking and critical thinking. Lateral thinkers are divergent in their thought. You know, under pressure, I will come up with more ideas. You know, if you force me into a corner, I'll say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? How many innovators does it take to screw in a light bulb? Does it have to be a light bulb? I will always change to something else. But critical thinkers do something different. Critical thinkers, this is a critical thinking chart. I can't even look at it. This is, by the way, this is the immigration process in the United States, honest to God. This is what it takes to get green card. So under pressure, critical thinkers will think, you know, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. They will go to a proven method that's worked for them in the past and draw a straight line between where they're trying to go and where they are today. That's what critical thinkers do. So, which are you? Are you a lateral thinker or a critical thinker? What I want to do is I want to show you a couple simple frameworks now to shake you out of your usual train of thought. But first, let's have a quick conversation. So let's fix something. Turn to your neighbor and think of one way that the TSA could do their job better. One way it would be easier to get through security at the airport. Go ahead, have a quick conversation.
Go through my So I'm not using go through in groups instead of a conveyor belt. Why can't it be a conveyor belt of people?
Now, you are a real lateral thinker. Apparently, I'm a critical thinker. I had no idea.
Yeah, I can say, yeah, instead of stopping, why can't it be you scan in before you get on the conveyor belt breakthrough, and they pull people off as, you
Throw them in the fire or something.
yeah, individuals. What else?
They need a big sign with rules.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, because you get in there and you never know, like...
Sometimes shoes are on, sometimes they're not. Sometimes laptops come in, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So I remember someone recommending a family lane, an individual lane, and then a personal lane, or like a business lane or something like that.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Kids slow down TSA more.
Yeah, absolutely, kids more than everything.
Not have it.
Not have it.
Just get rid of it and just kind of roll the dice.
There's got to be some pre-check.
Come on back to me. So, who would like to be brave and volunteer an idea to make the TSA a better experience? Chris?
Don't make me take my belt off.
Don't make you take your belt off. You have to think about belts. We'll talk about it later. Okay. Close.
Bigger bins.
Bigger bins. Awesome.
Consistency from airport to airport.
Awesome. Great.
Conveyor belt.
Conveyor belt. What about it?
You check in and then you jump on the conveyor belt and you go right through. If you buzz, then you're pulled out.
Yeah.
So if there's no stopping and checking in, you check in beforehand.
Have you all been to, I think it's Dallas, where they actually, you put your stuff on one set of tables, then you have to pick it up, move it over to another. I mean, why don't you move it? I actually called the manager. Can I just talk to someone? You know, if you just line the table up and lowered it a half inch, well, we can't do that. We don't have the authority to do that. Okay, so I want to point something out to you. Everybody here was using critical thinking. What they were doing was they were taking the existing process and making it better. Instead of going, why do we even do this? Why can't I get, instead of changing the process completely, you improved the existing process. Awesome. So I want to show you a lateral. If you're thinking critically, here's a very simple framework to think laterally. And a great way to think about it is, think about if you're a cab company 15 years ago, you would say, okay, what do people not like about cabs? You know what, let's make payment easier. Let's make, let's clean up our cars a little bit. You just make the process a little bit better. That's critical thinking. But Scamper is a lateral thinking exercise. So if you think, what can I modify? What can I eliminate? What if we eliminated the fleet of cars? What if we didn't own any cars? What if we combined the idea of payment and calling a driver? What if we, and you can see that just by going through a simple exercise like Scamper, which is substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, rearrange. Just by playing this game, you will come up with different ideas. I work with a guy named Joe Kim, and Joe Kim was a VP at our company, and I was in a meeting with him, and after the meeting, I was like, wow, you're such an idea monkey. You're the best ideator I've ever been around. You're amazing. He goes, I suck at ideas. What are you talking about? He goes, no, I'm really, really bad at ideas. So what I did was I taught myself 3 frameworks. And in a meeting, I'm literally in my head checking these boxes, and then out come these ideas. I go, that is incredible. That's what made me a believer. By the way, Joe's also the guy on United Airlines when they do the film and the oxygen mask comes down. That's Joe. So I get to see Joe like every week now. So that's a lateral thinking exercise. Here's another one. What would Jesus do? What WW blank D? I don't know. What would Jesus do? What would Mozart do? What would Steve Jobs do? What would Elon Musk do? What would Oprah do? If you force yourself to look at a situation through the lens of someone else, you will be a lateral thinker. So in the book, there are 14 different frameworks that critical thinkers can use to be lateral thinkers. Let's go the other way. What if you have so many ideas and don't know what to do with them? What if you are a lateral thinker and your challenge is, how do I figure out which idea to do best? Here is a ridiculously simple framework that I've been in offices where people lay these out. They're like, here you go. We're trying to make a decision. This is what we're working on this quarter. This is what we're working on this year. So here it is. This is 2x2. On the bottom, it's the cost. High cost, low cost. Now you define what cost is. Is that time? Is it capital? Is it emotional resource? You can use this personally as well. How much is this going to cost me or us? And on the vertical axis, the y-axis, value. Is this going to have a huge return or a low return? Simple as that. And then you take each one of your ideas by yourself or with your team and you put them in a quadrant. This is going to cost us a fortune and it's not going to return much value. And here's how it lays out. If it's low cost, low value, let's just delay it. If it's high cost, high value, we can only do a few of those because we only have so much time and so much money. If it's low cost, low value, let's forget about it. And if it's low cost, high value, what are we waiting for? And so what you'll see is leaders, disruptors, when they're stuck and they're trying to decide what to do, they will, out of their pocket comes a dry erase marker and they will go up and start just, let's frame it out. Let's use this framework. So a superhero power of disruptors is to rely on simple frameworks. Like I said, there's books here, I think, for everyone, and I've laid out a whole bunch of my favorite frameworks. None of them are mine, really. I've learned them from smarter people than me, which is pretty easy with me. Okay, so under pressure, when you feel yourself thinking laterally, because that's your go-to punch, try thinking critically. If you think critically, use a framework to think laterally. All right, so these are, one of my favorite sayings in the world is intelligence is learning from your own mistakes, and wisdom is learning from the mistakes of others. Intelligence leaves bruises. It hurts. It's painful. I made a mistake, and man, did that hurt. Wisdom is a generous gift, given with humility by someone who's willing to admit that they just made a mistake and it hurt. I like being around wise people. I really like being around leaders who say, look, dude, I don't want to give you too much advice here, but I did what you're about to do, and this is what happened. It's just telling you. That's my experience too. Do with it what you will. And so that's why I'm involved in organizations like entrepreneurs organizations, young presidents organizations, Vistage. And one of the practices of these organizations is you get together with a handful of people once a month for 4 hours. And then you go on vacation with them once a year. And you talk about wisdom. You know, this is what's happening in my business life. This is what's happening in my personal life. And you can imagine, this is a group that I've been getting together with for 22 years now. 22 years, 4 hours a week, a vacation every year. You can imagine after 22 years, you get into some pretty heavy stuff. And we're talking about making payroll. We're talking about the employee that won't leave, the employee that won't stay. We're talking about bar mitzvahs, divorces, deaths in our families. We know each other deeply. So this is Dave Kaplan. Dave Kaplan, an absolute disruptor. Studied law. Dave studied law. He 3 beautiful boys, an entrepreneur, great at starting businesses. The kind of guy you want to call at 3 in the morning when you've made a bad mistake and you don't want anyone to know about it. Very trustworthy, high integrity, just total bulldog of a man. Dave took his company, Resurgence Capital, to number 18 on the Inc. 500 list, and then he killed himself. And I remember driving in Green Lake, Wisconsin, and it was a Saturday morning, and I had a flip phone at the time, and my friend Tim had left a message and said, Mike, I need to talk to you. Call me when you can. And I knew it. I knew that Dave's ghost had caught up with him. Here's the thing. I've never met a disruptor, someone that is blowing stuff up, that is neither being chased by a ghost or chasing a ghost. The question is, which is it? Do you have it or does it have you? Dave had a tremendous ghost and it caught him, but it also drove him to be this amazing person. I love this quote by Carl Jung. When I was interviewing all these disruptors, I would bring this up. And some of them were like, oh my gosh, I totally know what you're talking about. And here's what I do about it. And some of them said, what are you talking about? Those were the bullies. Those were the jerks. Those were the people that were spinning out of control. It was the ones that understood that they had this chip on their shoulder that were the most productive and balanced people.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification methods. Created for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of a hundred-years-old force. Communication of force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we divide them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
So I love that spot, and it was only recently when I was doing work for this book that it occurred to me that Steve Jobs had a ghost. Like that commercial embodies the way he approached life. Here's a great shot of him flipping off IBM. Steve Jobs always had a nemesis. He always took on this giant company that was going to get him. He had this chip on his shoulder. He was fixated on how quickly life went by, and he was always punching up, always punching up. He punched AT&T, IBM, Sony, and Nokia, the publishing industry. It was always someone else that was going to get him. And if you read about Steve Jobs, he made grown men cry. He was a bully. I have friends that work for him, and it was like, it's historic how much of a jerk he could be, and yet he changed the face of history. I mean, because he had this thing on his shoulder. So what I want you to consider is, what are you thinking about at 3 a.m. when you wake up? When you wake up and your heart is beating, and you're thinking about something, what is it? Chances are it's related to your ghost. Sometimes it's your biggest fear. Sometimes it's a chip on your shoulder. Jimmy Kimmel at the White House Correspondents' Dinner about 10 years ago got up and he said, "Hey, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Mills, my 7th grade English teacher, who said I'd never amount to anything. Mr. Mills, I'm about to high-five the President of the United States." And he turned to Barack Obama, and Obama kind of went, okay, stood up and gave him a high five, and he turned to the camera and said, "Suck it, Mills." Jimmy Kimmel understands his ghost, and he's competing with his ghost. Do you? Here's another great example from the city of Chicago. We all know Michael Jordan as one of the greatest competitors ever to live. If you read his biography, you'll find that it wasn't enough to win. He had to step on your throat. And it didn't matter whether he was playing golf, poker, or basketball. It didn't matter if you were 5 years old or 55 years old. He was going to embarrass you. He wanted to stomp you. Yes, sir.
Quick question regarding Kimmel and Mills.
Yes.
So like in that scenario, should we, like Mills technically did a good thing by saying he won't amount to anything, and that's what pushed Kimmel, right?
Yes.
So is it like one of those where we should appreciate what he did, or should we?
Yes, that's a great question. So the way this book lays out, and I'm going macro for you, is here's a story, here's the practice, here are the takeaways. One of the biggest takeaways for the ghost chapter is to be grateful for your ghost. Really celebrate it. Most of the people that I interviewed that had the ghost, they had key performance indicators against the ghost. They were literally competing with their ghost every day, and they knew it. They totally knew it. They're like, okay, there's this thing, but I'm going to make sure it makes me a better person, and here's how I'm going to measure that progress. So Michael Jordan famously didn't make the varsity basketball team. A guy named Leroy Smith did. Leroy Smith was like 6'10", and Michael Jordan was 5'11" at the time. So, end of story, right? No. Everywhere Michael Jordan went as a professional, he checked in under the name Leroy Smith. Every hotel, every time he got a pizza delivered, Leroy Smith? Yes. When he made the Hall of Fame, he had 300 tickets. The last ticket, Leroy Smith, front row. In his Hall of Fame speech, he looked at him and said, I got you. I got you. He competed with Leroy Smith every day of his life. LeBron James, in a Sports Illustrated article just recently, literally said, Michael Jordan is my ghost. I compete with that guy every day. So LeBron James knows what he's doing. He knows who he's competing with. Do you? It's kind of like beware, be aware, or beware. That's the phrase. Okay, last one, Larry Walters. I love the story of Larry Walters. Larry Walters had a dream. He wanted to fly, but he had terrible eyesight. And so he couldn't get a pilot's license. He could barely get a driver's license, couldn't get in the military. But Larry figured that all he needed to make his dream of flight come true was a vehicle. And in this case, he chose his favorite lawn chair and named it Inspiration One. He needed something to propel Inspiration One. In this case, he acquired illegally 80 weather balloons, which he attached to Inspiration One. His unplanned plan was to float above his backyard, have a couple sandwiches, drink 2, 3, 4, 5 beers, take some pictures, call his friends on a walkie-talkie, and then after his main voyage was over, take out a BB gun, shoot the balloons, and float gently down to his backyard. How does that sound to you? What could possibly go wrong? So on the day of his maiden voyage, he called his girlfriend. She comes outside. He's floating 50 feet above his Jeep, which is tethered to Inspiration One. He's like, honey, cut the cord. It's time to fly. She goes, are you kidding me? You're really going through this? He goes, cut the cord. You're an idiot. Cut the cord. Whatever. Snip. Now this is where you cue that something bad is about to happen in music, because within seconds, Larry Walters was floating 16,000 feet above his backyard. And he was a little freaked out. So right about now, commercial jetliners were flying by and reporting to LAX what appeared to be a guy floating by in a lawn chair. It's a true story.
No parachute?
No parachute. And so he drank a bunch of beers, took some pictures, called his girlfriend on the walkie-talkie, said, everything's cool and fine, it's beautiful up here. Took out his BB gun, shot a balloon, nothing happened, shot another balloon, still nothing, shot a third balloon, and then he dropped his BB gun. Thank you. Eventually, the balloons lost pressure, he lost altitude, he got caught up in the main power lines that fed Long Beach County, California, thus taking out the power for the entire county for the next 4 hours. He climbed down a utility pole where he was immediately arrested for violating all kinds of FAA regulations. A few weeks later, he was fined $4,000 for said FAA regulations. A week after that, he won the Bonehead of the Year award for the Dallas Daily News. And then a couple months after that, the coup de grace, he was named runner-up in the Darwin Awards. Now, the Darwin Awards are given to people that improve the human species by eliminating themselves from it. Larry Walters came in second because he survived. And I'm like, I heard this story. The first time I heard this story, it was Dr. Ed, he goes by Ted Hallowell. He's the leading authority on ADHD. And I heard this, and I'm like, what an idiot. And then I had this horrifying realization that I'm Larry Walters. And I hope you are too. Because wherever there's, Ted says that wherever there's great disruption, there's a little bit of crazy. You have to be willing to jump on a lawn chair and fly. You have to be narcissistic, bold enough, or naive enough to think that you can reinvent a network like Ted Turner. That's where great change happens. So I hope some of you are a little bit like Larry Walters or Walt Disney. Now, I'm a big fan of Walt Disney. As a kid, I always wanted to go to Disneyland. My parents would take out black and white photos of me in a stroller and say, you've already been there and we can't afford to go back. So as a kid, I'm like, I gotta go to Disney, I gotta go to Disney. And people started to give me books on Walt Disney. And Walt Disney was a hero for me. The talking mouse, the happiest place on earth, animation, Walt Disney. And the more I looked into Walt Disney, the more I realized that it was his brother Roy who gave us the talking mouse animation and the happiest place on earth. Because whenever Walt had a big idea, Roy would actually make it happen. Roy was the yin for Walt's yang. I call people like this idea monkeys and ringleaders. And this is another superhero power of disruptors. They have a yin for their yang. They either have a partner that keeps them in balance, or they have a leadership team that is in balance, and they're very intentional about it. There's a Oprah Winfrey, one of the greatest entrepreneurs in the history of Chicago. I mean, she's unbelievable. Look at the west side of the city. She's incredible. Do you know she lost $340 million in the first 2 years of her network own? What happened? She went out to Hollywood and surrounded herself with a bunch of other creative visionaries, and gone were her operators. Well, after she realized that, she cleaned house and brought in her operators. She doesn't need a more imagination. She needs people to say, okay, let's get that done. Let's pick an idea and get it done. So there's actually a very good story about Walt Disney and Roy. It's Monday morning, and Walt's chain smoking and whistling. He's very happy. He's walking back to the office, and there's Roy, who hasn't left the office all weekend. There's a blackboard full of chalk with all these numbers, and Roy's like, I've been thinking about this all weekend, Walt. You know, your little idea is going to cost us over $2 million. $2 million, Walt. To which Walt responds, Roy, why do you bother me with these insignificant details? Wherever there's a Walt, there's a Roy. Wherever there's an idea monkey, there's a ringleader. Idea monkeys are about divergence. They're lateral thinkers. They like to predict the future. Ready, fire, aim. If you're into Colby, you're a quick start if you're an idea monkey. I strongly suggest you all use Colby to figure out where you are and the people on your team are, because you want a balanced team. They have energy, they have sparkle fingers, they can whip out the jazz hands and make you believe that this future, this idea is actually going to work. And sometimes they're right. And then there's the ringleader, who's about convergence, critical thinker. You know, have a plan, stay the course. Let's prove it before we do it. You know, these are the idea killers in organizations if you're an idea monkey. They're the ones who are focusing on the essential, not the important. And if you're into, again, Colby, you're a fact finder, high fact finder, and high follow through if you're a ringleader. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the room feel like they're more like Walt Disney, like a visionary idea monkey? How many people think they're more like Roy Disney? Keep your hands up, because I have something to say to you. Hands high. Hands high, ringleaders. Here we go. Ready? You complete me. I mean it. This is why it matters. We've literally blown millions and millions of dollars because we were working on another idea and another idea and another idea. We have people in our company that have missed their kids' soccer games because they were working on yet another idea. And what we've seen over the history of our company is that when our leadership team is in balance, we focus on just the right amount of ideas, not too many. Balance is the key. If I had one lesson that I wish someone would have taught me early in life, this would be the lesson. Find a partner to keep you in balance. This works personally and in business as well. The reason why it matters is because entrepreneurs are idea monkeys typically, and they're out of business in 18 months to 3 years on average. They run out of time, they run out of money, they run out of runway, they run out of friends. But look what's happening to the Fortune 500. The average Fortune 500 company is extinct now, gone, extinct in less than 40 years. And this is a trend that is accelerating greatly. This is why the future belongs to disruptors. You either need to be a disruptor, manage a disruptor, or know how to work with them. Because with the pace of change happening so quickly, you do need to have a new idea more quickly. There's a study that just came out from Yale that within 7 years, 75% of the Fortune 500 company will be firms that we haven't even heard of yet. That's how quickly the pace of change is happening. And that's why this balance between idea monkeys and ringleaders, between visionaries and operators on your team is so critically important. And that's why disruptors, when you see them, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, or just pick a famous company right next to them, you'll see an operator that keeps them in check. Elon Musk lost a CFO. I have this number. They lost like $3.4 billion in market cap the next day when the CFO resigned. The market knows that this balance matters. So you've got this process where you're converging and diverging, and if you're working through the process, we talked about this in brand new, You have ways to make the operator and the visionary, the idea monkey and the ringleader, feel strong and keep them in balance, so you gain speed towards a new product or service at launch. Here's some examples. When an idea monkey wants to brainstorm, a ringleader will say, well, about what? And they will force you to come up with a need and insight. Make the case that this is a big enough problem for us to solve. How much did Google spend on Google Glass? How much did Iridium spend, or Motorola spend on Iridium? $2 billion. $2 billion an idea that nobody needed. That's what happens when a ringleader doesn't say, what are we solving here? Why is this a big enough problem for us to challenge? And so there are ways to quantify insights. Here's an example, just a couple takeaways for you ringleaders in the room, since we have lots of ringleaders. The next time you find yourself about to say, that's a stupid idea, actually, let's just do something. This is fun. Turn to the person next to you. One of you have an idea, and the other one find a creative way to say, that's a dumb idea. Okay, so have an idea, and then the person next to you just say something about the idea that makes you go, kill the idea. Kill an idea.
Get rid of it.
That's a great idea.
I need an idea. No, and you have to kill my idea in a creative way.
I can kill your idea. And your line is, let's get rid of?
Yeah.
How do I kill that idea?
I don't know.
Bring it to life.
No, you're supposed to go, no. Just say no in a creative way.
You need advertising or this. I'll never spell this.
All right, come on back to me. Come on back. So, you guys are taking a lot of pleasure in killing ideas. So just shout it out. When someone killed your idea, just give me a feeling. How did it make you feel when someone said that's a bad idea? Anyone?
Angry. Crushing.
Angry, crushing. I'll show that. Push my shoulder. Awesome. How else? I need one more word. Argumentative. Inflated, argumentative. Okay. Awesome. So this is a strategy. It's a technique for ringleaders to use when they want to kill an idea. And it takes humility. It takes self-awareness. It takes a lot of discipline. But the next time you want to say, you can't do that, that's illegal. Take a step back, realize you're about to kill an idea, which is not very productive, and also realize that the reason you think it's a stupid idea is because you don't know how to solve it. It wouldn't be a stupid idea if you knew how to solve it, but you don't. So it's easier for you to say, that's illegal, than to make a wish. The technique is this: make a wish. I wish we could figure out a way to make that legal. Or how do we make that legal? And then just stop talking. And let that visionary, idea monkey, idea person go, oh, okay, yeah, oh, okay, how to make it legal. Okay, give me some time. Because here's the thing, you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. Those people outside your industry who aren't in your expertise track, they don't care and they don't know if it's illegal or not. They're just there's a problem to solve and they're gonna figure out how to solve it. Give your visionaries on the team a chance to prove you wrong, to come up with a solution that you might not have thought of yet. If you're an idea monkey, this is how I like people to define innovation. Venn diagram. You know I'm a consultant now because I showed you a Venn diagram. Here we go. So it's the synchronized intersection of an insight, an idea, and an experience. An insight first, idea second. Insight first, idea second. Insight, there are ways in the book, you can see how to quantify an insight. It's an insight statement, I statement of fact because but. I statement of fact because but. That dentist statement, I want my teeth to look whiter because it makes me look younger. But brushing alone does not make my teeth look white enough. $4 billion insight statement. Wow, if we could solve that. I don't want to solve that. I don't care. They care. So what's the insight? If you start with an insight first, then and only then you can go, okay, someone please figure out a cool way to solve this problem because there's a big need here. So insights first, ideas second. Before you go and have a big idea, think to yourself, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Do enough people really care about this problem? Okay? All right, last little story about idea monkeys and ringleaders. Everybody's heard of Jimmy Johns in this room. I know Jimmy and I know Jim, or I knew Jim, God rest his soul. We lost him a couple years ago. I actually knew Jim Leotold before I knew Jimmy Leotold. Jimmy has a sandwich shop. Jim is an entrepreneur. And I had lunch with Jim out in California about 2.5 years ago. And he told me this story. It's Jimmy's freshman year at Eastern Illinois University. 12 weeks in, he gets a phone call from Jimmy. And it sounds like this. Dad, I hate school. I suck at school. I've always hated school. I've always sucked at school. Why am I at school? To which Jim Sr. responded, this is something that I would have trouble saying as a dad, but his response was, well, fuck it, son. What do you want to do? And I quote, so forgive me. And Jimmy said, I think I might want to start a sandwich shop. Now, what could possibly go wrong? A college dropout competing against Subway, McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's. But his dad didn't say that's a stupid idea. What he said was, are you open to a little coaching? Would you take a little help from me? And he said, sure. Now what you need to know is that Jim Sr. was an engineer. He was a critical thinker. He had systems and patents that built companies, giant companies, which he sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. So when he said to his son, would you like a little help? What he was really saying was, I can help you with systems. I can help you line things up. Now Jimmy Johns will do over $2 billion with a B in sandwich sales this year. $2 billion. You don't sell $2 billion worth of sandwiches unless you're measuring every slice of tomato and every shred of lettuce, which they do. But here's the thing. You don't sell $2 billion worth of sandwiches unless a ringleader father loves his idea monkey son. Who completes you? Who's your soulmate? Okay, so 3 takeaways for you. I promise there are many, many more in the book. Takeaway number 1, rely on frameworks. Under pressure, there are these, I love saying parallel engineer. That's a clever way of saying stealing. Someone's figured out a framework to make you think differently. Just pick up a framework and use it. Know your ghost. Be aware or beware. That's something that I would encourage you to think deeply about. You're successful, you've got a chip on your shoulder. Really understand that and be grateful for it. And then finally, find the yin for your yang. Make sure that your leadership team, your company is in balance. Make sure that you have a soul. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
You complete me. Are you going to send it to Betsy or she
Thank
can
you,
send it
Mike.
to you? I want to see it.
Really interesting topic. I think one of the things is we just don't be afraid to fail, and also know your limits. Right, is kind of the keys, some of the keys to take away from that. But there are books available if people want to take one. Mike, if you're nice to him, he might sign one for you.
I'd be happy to.
It is an Amazon bestseller, so please feel free to take one. And thanks again. We intend to do another McGuffin morning, I think, this summer, right? And
In May, probably.
so hopefully we'll see you all again. And
Can
thanks again for
I
coming.
say one?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to thank McGuffin for having me here. I'm really, really proud of the people at McGuffin. I consider them, I love the people at McGuffin. Chris was the second person we ever hired at Maddock Douglas, and has done an amazing job building a company after being with our firm for a number of years. And Betsy had it put up with me. Betsy was actually my client for like 8 years, and then came to Maddock Douglas. So talk about a yin and a yang. I just want to thank you guys for having me here. I'm really proud of you and I love you guys. And also, for all the folks that have leaned into McGuffin and trusted McGuffin with some of their toughest challenges, thank you as well. I'm really grateful.